All right, I got a lot to get to here. Let me start with what we saw from the Browns and how it relates to Odell Beckham Jr., who we'll see tonight with the LA Rams as they take on the San Francisco 49ers. Baker was bad. The Browns are bad. The Patriots teed off on them. Here's Baker Mayfield summing up his game.
We just need to find ways to win because teams are going to play us differently. Just need to find ways to win, and that's, obviously stating the obvious, but that's the truth. So whatever it takes, and we need to do that. Everybody in our building has to look in the mirror and just kind of reevaluate, be accountable to themselves, to each other, because we're sitting somewhere where we thought we'd be in a better place right now, but we're not. So it's time to reevaluate, and everybody needs to hold themselves accountable.
Here is Mac Jones, quarterback of the Patriots.
Overall, great team win, and that's how you want to play the game of football. And I think it starts with the offensive line. They deserve all the credit in the world. The defense is going out there getting stops. Special teams is making their plays. So it's just a 3-level game, and when we click on all cylinders, we can be pretty good.
This is the Patriots wide receiver Kendrick Bourne talking about Mac Jones.
Mac always looks poised. I don't know what it is. He's just driven a different way. He's wired a different way. He's just relaxed, and I think that's how we all need to play. He's not thinking about the next play. He's not thinking about the last play. He's thinking of the current play. So that mindset can, take you far in this league when you have that kind of mindset. I think he has it. So because it's easy to dwell on the past, and it's easy to get caught up on what's ahead, what's coming. So he's good at just being in the moment and fixing what he got going on right there. Mac is the leader, so we're following him, and he's doing a great job.
It's Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. Okay, so look, I think that the Mac Jones thing, it's interesting. Remember, Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones, and he got talked into Trey Lance. And today you're hearing people say, well, look at Bill Belichick and the Patriots, and they're back. And my point has always been, as Tampa loses to Washington, Tampa losing to Washington you're not defaming Tom Brady, just like that doesn't mean you crown Bill Belichick. But when they played against each other about a month ago, Brady wins, Belichick loses. And I was like, it all has to do with where your team is. Tampa was terrible for years. They had tons of talent. They needed a quarterback. They got one, and he was able to bring Gronk out of retirement and bring Antonio Brown, and they caught a soft back end of their schedule, and they end up winning 3 road games and won a Super Bowl. But that doesn't mean that Bill Belichick had a bad year last year, in my opinion, 7-9, considering he lost 8 guys to opt-outs and, shuffled around through quarterbacks with Cam Newton unable to really throw a football. And he actually did maybe a better coaching job that year than previous years with winning teams with the Patriots. But I think a lot of the focus of this game is on Baker Mayfield because you come off of a week in which Odell Beckham Jr. is released. This is a week after the discussion was about Odell Beckham Jr.'s dad's post showing OBJ open and not getting the football. Now, the reality to it is a couple of things. We don't know if OBJ runs his routes correctly or at the right depths. And for a quarterback, when you're going through progression reads, you have to know where everybody's going to be. Bang, 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 bang. Unless you're out kind of scrambling around playing backyard football, at which time it comes about communication, just seeing things, and wide receivers seeing the same things as they go through not just their routes, but also when they're going to break off those routes. But what if I told you that Odell Beckham Jr.'s or seniors, whatever, and like part of the deal is senior doesn't get the all 22 and be able to diagram stuff unless whether it's junior or people around him are authorizing that. Plus, they have to help him along. Okay, what if I told you that Odell Beckham Jr. is probably more right than he is wrong, but there's just things you can't say? I'll give you an example. Okay. If you've ever been in a relationship, especially a marriage where one person works and the other person does not, you know what you can't say if you're the person that works? I earn the money, right? The one's staying at home with the kids, the other one's working, and it doesn't mean that you're not technically correct. But it's just not, you just can't be, it can go unsaid. Unsaid. Somebody else can say it. It's when Ricky Henderson had the most stolen bases of all time. He had a little speech on the field, and he said he considered himself the greatest of all time. The greatest of all time is a lot like a general nickname. You can't give one to yourself. You can't call yourself the greatest of all time. I mean, like, look, that's part of where LeBron is, right? Where he in the what's the barbershop, the shop, where he said he considers himself the greatest of all time because of the comeback against the Golden State Warriors down 3-1. Like, again, he may be right, but that's not. You don't say it. And where Odell Beckham Jr. was wrong is not his critique, if it's critique of Baker Mayfield. It's that you can't post those things. You can't say those things. You have to almost be, at least publicly, you almost have to be like one of those supporters of a certain political leader, where they get done with the debate and no matter what, they could have fallen asleep at the dais. They could have literally said F, and you're like, he was amazing tonight. She was incredible tonight. Like, yeah, she started crying on stage. She started throwing things at the moderator. She literally gave a booing fan the finger in the third row. Like, she was amazing. Like, you almost have to be that. And Odell Beckham Jr., he's not saying any things that other people don't know in the NFL. He's not providing context. The reason that he's out in Cleveland, okay, isn't because he was wrong that Baker Mayfield isn't nearly as good as some of the other elite quarterbacks in the NFL. He isn't as good as he should be to be a number 1 overall pick. But can't say it. You know? You just can't. And we all know different instances in life where we have been in those situations. Even if it's painfully obvious, you can't say it, you can't post it, you can't do it. Right? There's a way in which you can be subtle. There's a way in which you can be sly. There's social jujitsu to it where you can kind of move about and avoid and push back without looking like you're, all that's fine. You can't just post videos and say, this guy sucks. I'm not the reason we're not good, even if it's true. And it was true yesterday. Eventually, that'll all come out. And it did come out yesterday. They were confused. Bill Belichick drove circles around them. And then their offense, and Mac Jones, who's been playing quarterback for 5 minutes for the Patriots, looked much more comfortable, much more adept. And no one would ever say, hey, I'd take the Patriots wide receivers over the Browns wide receivers, even without OBJ. But yesterday you would have. Why? It was a virtuoso in coaching and in execution. Baker wasn't good enough. He hasn't been good enough as often as he has been this year. That's not, for a guy who wants a massive contract extension, that's not great. But just like you can't tell your husband or your wife who doesn't work and takes care of the kids, hey, I made this money, I'll make the decisions, you cannot do what he did.